Why is financial literacy just not taught in schools?
That's a very good question. Like I always ask people, what does school teach you about money? And for most people, say, well, it's not important. I remember I was 9 years old in the fourth grade, and I asked my elementary school teacher when we will learn about money, and she says to me, she says, "The love of money is the root of all evil." I said, "Who told you that?" She says, "You should learn that in Sunday school." So the corruption goes deep into religion and everything. So that's why they don't teach money. They think it's some kind of religious problem or something. I really don't understand it. So the whole education system is geared to be anti-money. Our teachers speak the language of a school teacher. I speak the language of a capitalist. I know there's an asset and liability. I know what bailout means. If you read the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, was by G. Edward Griffin. It's the book on how the Fed was created. It's Jekyll Island, I think in 1913. Is the opening chapter is the name of the game is bailout. Mm-hmm. So every time the banks get trouble, the whole system is set up to bail out the rich. Oh, really? No, they wouldn't do that. I mean, we're supposed to be equality and all this stuff. No. This whole setup is to protect the banks and Wall Street and those guys. That's why I don't save money. I borrow money. That's why I don't own stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and ETFs like Tony Robbins recommends. I won't touch that stuff. And I don't trust the school system. So I'm an entrepreneur. I can create my own assets. I don't need to buy them from Wall Street or the banks.
But what would financial education in school look like for you? What would you like to have learned?
Well, it was really simple because my poor dad, I finally bugged him enough, I said, well, when am I going to learn about money? He said, why don't you ask your best friend's father, my classmate? And that was Mike in the book. And I said, why does Mike's father know about money? My poor dad said, because he's an entrepreneur. And what are you? He says, I'm an employee. I'm only 9 years old. I'm learning 2 new words, employee and entrepreneur. I went, what? What's the difference, And then my poor dad says, well, an entrepreneur must know about money. An entrepreneur must speak the language of money. And then my poor dad says, I said, what are you? He says, I'm a school teacher. I'm an employee. So that's kind of I'm 9 years old. I am totally confused now. So I sit down with my rich dad, who never went to school, ironically, and he wouldn't teach me about money either. And he kept rejecting me. I didn't realize it was part of the process. He wanted to find out how badly I wanted to learn. And he says, and as we all know as entrepreneurs, right, salesmanship begins when the customer says no. And so the more he said no, the more I got inside. I said, well, and so I kept, going back to talk to him and all. He says, get out of here, kid. So that was test number 1 from my rich dad. Test number 2 was as if I teach you, you have to work for me for free. And I said, why for free? He says, because if I pay you, you'll think like your dad, poor dad. The rich don't work for money. So if you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is right there, the rich don't work for money. And then I'm now all confused as a 9-year-old kid. And so that's when the whole thing started about financial education. And I realized, my poor dad, he was going for his PhD, which stands for poor, helpless, and desperate. And in the academic world, the school teachers, most are, they don't know it. They're good people, but they don't know they're.
Yeah.
And my poor dad kept saying, well, if I get my PhD, then I'll be safe. PhD, what's that? So he went to Stanford, University of Chicago, Northwestern. He still learned nothing about money. And so our kids, the young kids, about your generation today, they're they're indoctrinated, not educated. So our education system is more corrupt today than, let's say, 60 years ago when I was a kid. You see, the language of money is the definition of the word. So, and the good thing about it is you want to be rich, just speak the language of money. Like if I wanted to go to, let's say, Spain, I would learn Spanish. If I wanted to go to Japan, I'd learn Japanese. But when you go to a school system, you learn the language of a school teacher. Go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, pay taxes, get out of debt, and buy a house because it's an asset. But all you have to do is learn the words. So my poor dad called his house an asset.
Mm-hmm.
And my rich dad said, your house is a liability. Again, it's just the power of words and language. So the difference between rich people and poor people are words, and words are free. And it naturally it upsets the school teachers who are mostly, they're not bad people. In 1965, I read the Communist Manifesto by Marx. And as I read, I went to military school in New York. And reading the book, I realized, my God, my family's communist.
Wow.
So they believed in taxes. They believed in, they abolished real estate. Today Klaus Schwab says, you will have nothing and you'll be happy. That's all Communist Manifesto stuff. And then, well, you got to pay taxes. Well, Marx said graduated income tax is essential for the spread of communism. And so my father, poor dad, he believed in paying taxes. My rich dad didn't. Again, the word is taxes. Mm-hmm. And so when you look at what Biden's doing right now, he just put in 87,000 IRS agents who are armed. The reason is they're going after you, small business. They're going after the small entrepreneur. They can't touch me, because I'm not that stupid to pay taxes, and I can do it legally. But the real facts are, in 1773, America was founded as a tax-free nation. It was called the Boston Tea Party, which says, screw you, we're not paying taxes. Then came 1776, was a battle of Lexington and Concord and the Revolutionary War. Just look at the facts. Look at history. But no, these academic types, they want to blur history.
You talk about, don't save money in a bank account. So let's start there. Why shouldn't people be saving money in a bank account?
You got to be crazy. I mean, look, they printed more money in the last, 5 years than ever in history. America is now the biggest debtor nation in history. Why don't they teach that in school? Our debt to GDP a few years ago was 90% debt to our gross production, GDP. And today it's about 125%. So the more they print money, the deeper in debt we get. So they increased the debt, right? And now we can't pay it off. And then they're going to raise interest rates into a recession. Now, you got to be kidding me. This guy Biden is going to crush this whole country. I mean, Europe's in more serious trouble than we are.
Yes.
Germany's in serious trouble. England's in trouble. Japan's in horrible problems. China's in trouble with Evergrande. The real estate's crashing. So this whole thing starts in academics. Why don't they teach us about money? So the debt's going up. We can't pay it off anymore. They're going to raise interest rates, and tax rates are dropping. Because the economy slowed so much, our taxes are going down. So that means the debt's going to accelerate. This is called a debt spiral or a death spiral. I think we're maybe 2 weeks to 2 years out from a crash, biggest crash in history. And I want to prove I know what I'm talking about is this book here, Rich Dad's Prophecy. This book was written in 2013. It followed the 2008 crash. And it says here why the biggest stock market crash in history is still coming and how you can prepare yourself and profit from it. But I'm going to change the title from why the biggest stock market crash in history is here. And I think it's too late for most people. They're going to get hammered.